The CCPA is live. We're all gonna die. Uh, this is Richard Chapo. I'm a privacy lawyer in San Diego, California, and today we're talking about the CCPA. So it went into effect on January 1st, 2020. CCPA is the California Consumer Privacy Act. It is a new California privacy law that businesses must comply with. And I'm recording this on January 3rd, 2020. So if you are collecting personal data from people in California and you are not in compliance with this law, ah, uh, so is the world at an end for you? Should you sell all of your assets, take the money, and move to a remote island in the South Pacific somewhere? Well, one, that sounds kind of attractive to me regardless of the CCPA, but assuming you still want to stay in business here and you want to live in the States and function online, you need to start thinking about the CCPA because it is now in effect. Now, the important thing to understand is regulations. The CCPA can primarily be enforced by the California Attorney General. However, the AG's office cannot enforce it until looks like June 2020, this summer. And the reason for that is the regulations for the CCPA have not been finalized yet. And so when a law like the CCPA is passed, a government authority, a government agency is usually tasked with issuing a regulation. And that's what the California Attorney General is trying to do now. Now, there's a process they have to go through of hearings and drafts and a period where people can comment on the regulation and what have you. And that we're in that process now. It's not finalized. And so it's a little hard for businesses to be fully compliant with the CCPA if we don't know what the final regulations are going to be. However, you're expected to be about 90% compliant because the regulations are only filling in gaps in the CCPA. So, for instance, the CCPA tells you as a business that if a California consumer requests copies of their personal information that you've collected from them, you have to produce it to them. Well, you have to do that. Now, all the regulation is going to do is tell you how to do that. Do you have to print it out in paper and give it to them? Do you have to give it to the person in electronic form? If so, what format? Those kinds of things. That's what the regulations seek to clarify. And so we're kind of waiting for that to be finalized. And because of that, the California State Assembly or state legislature said that they were going to extend enforcements to June 2020, or 6 months after the regulations were finalized. And so the earlier date is going to be June 2020. Now, that does not mean that the California Attorney General in June cannot look back to violations from this point, from January 1st, 2020 through June. So it's not a get out of jail card. It's just, the AG is not sending you a letter tomorrow. That doesn't mean in January or in June, they can't send you a letter saying, hey, you were not in compliance with the CCPA in January. As I note there in point 3, shake that booty. You need to figure out if you need to comply with the CCPA. And then if you do, you need to go about doing so. So to figure out if you need to comply, you need to go through the threshold tests that are called out in the CCPA. That's kind of beyond the point of this video. But basically, you need to sit down and talk to an attorney. You need to say, here's all my data. Here's, where I'm bringing revenues in. Here's my website and app data, or, whatever data you have that you're collecting from California individuals, and figure out if you need to comply. And then if you do need to comply, what are the steps you need to take to meet that compliance burden? And you need to get moving, frankly, because June's going to be here quicker than you think. And, if you're a couple of weeks late or a month late on compliance, meaning that you start now and you're compliant by the end of January, likely it's not a big deal. But if you wait until June and, start worrying about things then, well, yeah, it is a big deal and you've got a big problem on your hands. So get off your tuchus. I know the holidays were great, but it is time to get moving on this stuff. Seriously. Do not procrastinate. Now, there's one issue that I should probably mention, and that's some of the positions that people took on the GDPR. There were a lot of people in the U.S., American companies, small and large, who said, well, I don't have a physical presence in Europe, so what do I care about the GDPR? How are they going to first enforce it against me in the USA? We're a sovereign country and what have you. And it was an interesting position, and we're still waiting to see how it plays out. Quite frankly, I think there's some strength in that argument. That argument does not apply to the CCPA. So if you were a company in a state other than California, and you're thinking, well, how's California going to apply this to me? The answer is very easily. We have something called reciprocity and sister state judgments in the U.S., and it is very easy to enforce penalties issued under state laws in one state against companies in another state. Is typically not a very difficult barrier to get over. Usually it's the filing of a couple forms and maybe a hearing, and that is it. So if you are in Florida or Maine or who knows where, and you're thinking, I'm not a California company, come get me, the Attorney General's reaction is going to be, okay, here we come. And you're going to be in for a very, very bad shock. So don't rely on that viewpoint. Because although there's some legitimate questions as to whether it's a valid defense against the GDPR, it is not against the CCPA. So again, CCPA is live. It is in effect January 1st, 2020, and it is not going to be invalidated. There is no movement whatsoever to get rid of the CCPA. So make sure you find out, do you have to comply? And if you do, get moving because you don't want to be in for an ugly surprise this summer. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me at SoCalInternetLawyer.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please don't post any comments below because they're not protected by the attorney-client privilege. Contact me through my website. Again, that's SoCalInternetLawyer.com. Otherwise, hope you have a good 2020.